I'm doing great. Just man, this is the only time, man, that I actually really get to kind of relax and chill. I mean, I do a little bit after work or what have you, but sometimes, but work tends to take me all the way to midnight sometimes. But this is the only time that I get to relax and chill, man. So I appreciate this time on the show. How you doing this week, man?
Man, I'm awesome. A lot going on. Definitely, I want to do a little follow up, but business wise, everything's good. Picking up. I am in the best shape physically and financially that I can be at the moment. And I encourage everyone to take care of your health and definitely try to find ways to increase your revenue, whether you are trying to downsize, save some money, but we definitely in a time to where we got to take care of our health and our wealth. If they've never been a challenge, this is it.
I tell you, man, when you talk about that, taking care of your health and taking care of your wealth, um, it's just interesting how we can continue to go on. And I know everyone wants to get back to normal, but it's as if people don't realize that normal has come and gone, that things have changed. So you have to. This is not a time to sit back and lollygag. It isn't. This is a time where you should be focused wholeheartedly on building. I mean, the pandemic let everybody know that, hey, your job isn't secure. So remember, that's someone else's dream that you're building. So you need to focus on having something. And most financial analysts out there, I hear plenty of them speak. They'll say, listen, having a part-time business is essential these days, from the tax shelter to the potential revenue, extra revenue it can bring in. So instead of having a part-time job, having a part-time business is essential, man. And the laws are changing out here, man, and that's kind of what we're gonna get into on the show, right?
Exactly. Definitely. I'm glad we got attorney, former prosecutor Karl Price, going to come on with us. But listen, as we recount what we talked about last week, it's very important again to pay attention to what's going on in Australia. Where you have individuals cannot get back into the state where they live without taking the vaccine. What does that mean? What that means is that someone who will leave their state, going to another state or a province, and but that state has a rule that you can have to be vaccinated. So imagine you can't go back home. Imagine just Kentucky and Tennessee. You go to Tennessee to visit somebody. Kentucky has a rule that you must be vaccinated, right? And so you can't come back to your own home unless you are vaccinated. And this is the issue that they are pushing. But here's what's interesting, and that I definitely want Mr. Price to get on, is about the Constitution. One of the things that we have here that protects us is the Constitution. And the Constitution is not the government. In fact, the Constitution was written by people to protect you from the government. In other words, the government cannot do anything without what is called due process of the law. And so right now we having a great pushback. We having governors pushing back the mandate. We have again Ron Paul, Ted Cruz, and they all Republicans. Doesn't matter what they are, but they're on the right side of the track. We have our Attorney General pushing back. And what's very interesting, again, is that what are we pushing back? Like, I'll give you an example. Chicago, their police department, their union, and now they were supposed to be vaccinated by a deadline or lose their job. But guess what their union did? Union said, nope, you're not going to fire officers, and they don't have to take the vaccine. What are they standing on? Constitution. Look at the airlines. The airline pilots, just because of their union, now, right, they told all the airline pilots, hey, you're going to have to take the vaccine or you're going to lose your job. Well, guess what? The union said, nope, you ain't gonna mess with their jobs, and they don't have to take the vaccine. So what is important here is the Constitution. And so we are on a show right now with probably predominantly African Americans, blacks, those who look like us are listening to this show. We need to understand the Constitution and how it works, and what it provides. Because here's the thing: once you understand this Constitution, you will fall in love with it. Because no other country in the world has such a Constitution that will protect you. And I want you to know the difference between what is the Constitution and what is government. So here's what the Constitution wrote in the First Amendment. It says Congress shall not make no laws respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the rights of the people peacefully assembling and to petition who? The government. Who? To petition the government for a redress or grievance. What does that mean? That means that I can stand up to the government with this Constitution of this right. Now look at the Second Amendment, which is also important because this is where we get into the word militia, right? And it's written in this Constitution that only has 27 words to it. It's the Second Amendment. And it says, a well-regulated. Now, what is regulated? That means organized. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. What does that mean? What that means is that if the state denies your rights, the militia will come and straighten that state out, right? Because why? The Constitution gives them the right to assemble and to bear arms against who? The United States government. Now, when I mention that, I ask anybody, I'm asking you who are listening, what is your constitutional concerns about your right? Because I don't ever see black militias challenging the government. I don't even see black people, churches, whatever, challenging the government of your constitutional rights of what they can and cannot do. I don't hear the ADOS petitioning the government when it talks about these mandates, right? So a lot of times it seems like we as a people, black people,
Oh shit. Oh fuck. All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, let me get rid of it here. Okay. All right. All right, so you can hear me fine?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good, good, good. Let's see here. Is this the one? This Did I remove the wrong one? Let's see what we got in the background here. Okay. And man. All right, so you can hear me fine. All right, that's good. I don't know what's going on camera wise or what have you. Again, man, today has been a morning of technical difficulties, and I do want to apologize. 'Cause, part of that, I believe, but man, I tell you, I don't know what type of camera you got, man, but that thing almost looked like 3D. It's so clear.
Oh yeah.
I feel like you sitting in the living room right beside me, man, and we having a face-to-face conversation for real. It is clear. But that this conversation is something we need to talk more about. Um, about all of this. I mean, anything having to do with government. Okay, we've been lacking in that area. We need to talk more about it. The Constitution. That's going to help us understand more of what we shouldn't do, need to do, all that good stuff. Um, you know, these are conversations need to be had. And it's interesting when you start talking about different things. I can remember recently being around some fellas, and one of the guys, was down. He got separated and divorced like 4 years ago. But I mean, man, his whole conversation was all about that woman. Obviously, he ain't had no brothers to sit back and talk to about it, right? And the other brothers were kind of like, like, man, I wish he would be quiet and stop talking about all of that. It's tiring and it gets on my nerves, right? But at the same time, I sit back and I look and I say, well, we don't talk about this stuff enough. We don't talk about our marriages and things of that nature. So yet and still conversations that need to be had end up not being had because we shun away from them. So, even correlate that, we can't even have a conversation about, our wives, brothers can't get together and talk about that, or our relationships and stuff. Well, we damn sure ain't gonna get together and talk about the government and our rights and things of that nature, because shit, that's another book to open up, another link to click on. That's something else to do. And it seems like we just don't want any extra stuff to do.
It's crazy. I sent Karl the link. See if he wants to come on.
Okay.
Text him and see if he wants to come on and build with us on this subject. Yeah, I mean, the Constitution, man, is the thing. And can you hear me good?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
The Constitution is the thing, and I think that's where we misunderstand the importance of the Constitution and how we can stand on the rights of that. And listen, I don't care how much you don't like this country. Okay, he said, bring me in. Let him know I sent it to his Facebook page.
To his messenger?
Yeah, I sent it to your messenger, Mr. Price. Yeah, and how the Constitution is so important, man. I'm telling you, man, whoever wrote the Constitution, man, you should have a picture on your wall next to your Black Power pictures. That's how important the Constitution is. You should have a picture of whoever wrote it beside all your Black Power stuff.
Hey, I mean, I looked it up actually, and it said that James Madison is considered to be the father of, known as the father of the Constitution, because of his pivotal role in the document's drafting as well as its ratification. Madison is
also drafted the first 10 amendments to the Bill of Rights. So he is responsible for drafting the first 10 amendments there. That's pretty dope there. But yeah, he should probably. I mean, he probably owned a bunch of slaves himself. But hey, you know, I mean, now how do you correlate that? I mean, because that's where some people gonna argue, even with that statement you just made, John, saying, yo, you should probably have them up there with your Black Power pictures and everything else.
Well, here's why I say that. It's because of that the Constitution, the freedom of the religion, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom to bear arms, all of those things we used to gain our freedom. If it wasn't for the Constitution, we still be in bondage right now today, right? We wouldn't have the right to assemble. I mean, think about it. Back then, three black people together talking was against the law. You remember, running from the plantation was against the law. And so we have this Constitution that protects us and gives us these rights. And so if it wasn't for the Constitution, I wouldn't be standing here today. I mean, think about it. And let's put it in context of my love for the Constitution. You know, this due process, which is the 14th Amendment. When you violate my due process, even if I am guilty, you know, even if I am guilty of the crime, you cannot take away my life without due process. And so I stand here today because they violated my due process. And that's how I end up being free. Because they violated my constitutional rights. And I mean when I say, even in light of you are guilty of the crime, you still have a due process that they must follow to convict you. And if they violate that right, the Supreme Court will overturn your conviction. That's based upon the Constitution, the 14th Amendment. We should be very thankful for the Constitution at this point, because Australia don't have this Constitution, and they're trampling on the rights of their citizens right now. They're kicking their citizens in the ass right now. And so here we have the right to assemble. We have the right to fight back. We have the right to say, hell no, fuck your vaccines, and I ain't going for it. We have the right to do that. If you look at last year, even when they tried to block people from religious gathering, a lot of religious people said fuck you. And what did they do? They had sheriffs out there to write tickets for the cars. They didn't have blockage or the sheriffs out there to make them move out of the churches. They just fucked with them by fucking with their cars.
Exactly.
So you had people still going to church. You had militias running around saying, we will not comply to your bullshit. And this is the right that we are afforded. And so we got to understand. That's why I don't know who y'all think this Second Amendment is for, but when it talks about the militia, a regulated militia, that means well organized militia, can defend the Constitution against the state when the government tramples on your rights. Who do you go to? Who do you go to when the government does it? You have to go to the Constitution, right? And there's a group in the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. Militia, not the black one. The black ones is just a full of niggas, full of shit. I'm talking about the militia who will stand up to the United States government. That's who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't care what color they are. Doesn't matter, because there's some black militias in that group too, right? And they're not all Klansmen. But when you hear militia, the first thing Negroes think is Klansmen. I ain't never seen the militia come down and take nothing from you. I don't see them coming down into the hood fucking with you at all. The militia's job is to protect the Constitution. Let this government talk about taking away your gun rights. Watch who stands up. It won't be the ADOS Negroes. It won't be the Christian Negroes. It won't be the church Negroes. It won't be NAACP. It will be the white militia. We got to understand who our friends are, and we got to understand this, very important. You need to line with your enemy's enemy, and not make your enemy's enemy your enemy.
You know, and there's something to think about too. Is the, you know, when you start talking about militia, but the definition, a military force that is raised from the civilian population to supplement a regular army in an emergency. All able-bodied civilians eligible by law for military service. A militia is generally an army or something other, or some other fighting organization of non-professional soldiers, citizens of a country, right? Citizens of a country or subjects of a state who may perform military service during a time of need. So it's all in referencing the people. It's us. It's us when we decide to come together and stand up. When we decide, oh my God, can you think about that? Just, I mean, the thought just hit me for a second. If we put aside our differences and come together to fight against wrongdoings of the government. And wrongdoings, everyone should understand under one umbrella, should be having anything to do with taking away our rights, having to do with the Constitution. And when you start talking about freedom of speech, you know, the right to assemble, these are things that are getting, like you said, getting fucked with. And it's just crazy that people look at this and they are not thinking about standing up. They just look at their God, the dumb box. They look at their God and they say, okay, hey.
They just look at their God, the dumb box.
I'm going to follow that.
And they say,
you gotta, do you have the show on in the background there, Karl?
In the background there, Karl?
I do. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can. Okay, the echo's gone, I believe.
Yep, it's gone.
Yep, echo's gone. Okay, thank you, brother. I see you trying to turn it down to the minimum. All right, good stuff. Good stuff. You know, and so we're still on this conversation. We're still talking the same thing. And I don't know. Do you hear the echo, John?
You're hearing the echo. Yeah. You got another window open?
Let me mute something else here.
Okay, not a problem. But
I'm gonna watch this on my phone, and then that would be
okay. I'm not hearing it at all right now. All right, so good. But you know, I mean, this conversation needs to be had more, Karl. Okay, Brother Price, this is something that needs to be had much more. Why don't we have these conversations much more? Why don't we as a people have the conversation much more? Much more.
Still hearing
Why
the echo.
don't we have these conversations much more? Why don't we as a people have the conversation much more? Much more. Why don't we have these conversations?
Can y'all still hear that? I think that might be my computer.
Yeah, we got an echo.
Yeah, whatever you did, I think you went to it from your phone. Are you able to turn the volume all the way down on that?
All right. Is that right? Is that? I don't hear it now.
All right.
Yeah.
I think we're good. Karl is frozen in
No, he's not frozen.
Oh, see, that's that modeling days right there.
Yeah, that might be.
He did a mannequin pose on us.
I'm not gonna mute my mic. Anyway, if y'all can hear me, I cannot hear y'all. I probably need to put some headphones on.
Oh, you can't hear us. That's what's going on. Gotcha. All right, good stuff. So I mean, you know, why do you think that we as a people Okay. Let me put it this way. Here we are, John, in the midst of a pandemic, right? And all the evidence points to the fact that the most unhealthiest people dealing with it the most, the COVID-19 the most. So
Karl, we can
wouldn't
hear
common
you.
sense?
You can't hear us?
Yeah, he can't hear us, but we can hear him.
Could you hear us now?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Yep,
Great.
absolutely.
Any echoing?
No.
No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah.
You are looking like the DJ Karl Price Conscious Fever himself right now with the headphones. Absolutely. Good to go. All right, good stuff. But John, back to what I was saying. You know, when you really look at this, we're in the midst of a pandemic. All the evidence points to the fact that if you're unhealthy, then you're going to deal with this the most. They talk about black people being the unhealthiest to deal with this the most. So the question would be, or the thought should be, to focus more on your health. So now let's relate that to law. All right, our the laws are starting to come down on people and say you have to get the shot of you or you're gonna lose your job. Blah blah blah. So common sense should tell you, you know what? I need to learn more about the law so that I can maneuver this or maneuver my way through this. Why do you think people don't look at these simple things like that as common sense and then now focus on because I mean in bringing all this stuff to my attention, I know I'm sitting here Googling the Constitution and reading up everything I can right now, so in my common sense thought process, what you're lacking, you should go find more information about. Why do you think people don't do that?
You want that, Karl?
I think people don't do it. Yeah, I'll take it, John. I think people don't do it, Joe, because it's too hard. I mean, people just don't do things that are hard these days.
I mean, prostitutes still do.
You say what?
Prostitutes still do things that are hard, but that's a whole nother joke. With that in mind, when you start talking about it being hard and difficult, I mean, I'm sitting here looking at it right now. I'm at my computer. I typed in a couple words and boom, I'm looking up the definition of militia. I got the Constitution on another tab. I'm over here looking up about tattoos and sins and I got it all sitting right here and it's at the tip of my finger and this same supercomputer that I have here is the same thing that I could utilize with my cell phone.
Right.
That became a big problem today. But
yeah, people don't do it, Joe. Listen, I mean, just being candid, people don't do it because if we look,
are people stupid?
People, I think people have become to be mildly stupid and not know it. I mean, quite candidly, because think about this: when we were coming up, in order to get what we can now get from this phone, we had to go to a library.
Sure did.
To spend hours in the library to get it.
I remember microfiche.
Yes, yeah, microfiche and all. I mean, if you want to get the old stuff, it's microfiche, But now you can log on to YouTube and hear slave narratives. I would tell you that there is a portion of our community in this country, of our society, that actually have been educated from YouTube University, but they don't have a paper degree. I mean, they are working jobs. They're making money, good money, basically by reviewing videos on YouTube, how-to videos on YouTube. So it's really a matter of choice. I mean, you can use this phone to watch fights in Walmart, or you can use it and read the Constitution of the United States and understand the Bill of Rights and listen to all the different commentaries and points and counterpoints. But people just don't do that because people don't even see this as a valuable educational option. They just don't. So I don't know if that's stupid or if that's mildly retarded, but you have to ask yourself, why do we continue in our community in swim in ignorance? I
Well,
mean, it's
you said something that, in the beginning of starting to answer that, you said something that made a lot of sense. Um, when you said it made me think when you said, you think people have been dumbed down and don't realize it. So my question was, how do they not realize it? And what made me think is that because everybody around them is getting just as dumb as them. So if everybody around you is just as dumb, you're not even noticing how dumb you are. And I hate to use the word dumb, but the reality, I mean, I'm using that out of a mild anger in a sense, because the reality is that I don't understand personally people looking at the idea that everyone should have a choice of whether they want to say yay or nay to this vaccine. I don't care. I got friends that said yay. I got family that said yay. I got plenty of friends and family that say nay. It doesn't change who they are to me. I'm still gonna be friends and family with them, but a lot of people, uh, they focus on not being friends and family. If there's a nay, if there's an opposing argument, then people focus on, you know, not being as close as they were before. I see it all the time with so many different things, but I think a lot of people are just not realizing it, like you said, because everybody around them is all coming down mentally, educationally at the same time. I mean, I look at this and I see, when it comes to our rights, I mean, I see every futuristic movie I've ever watched. you know, Monthly stipends, the elite over here, and all the 95% crowded together to uh, uh, do just the simple necessities for the 5%, right? The simple necessities of work for the 5%. And if you ain't got that skill set for those simple necessities, if you ain't got the skill set to be the one person in a fast food restaurant now that helps to press the buttons for all the robots to put shit together, then you are now SOL. So these laws being diminished, this is the beginning of it. Is from what I see. But that's me, my opinion, and my interpretation, right?
No, I agree. I mean, I think that we as a society eventually drown in the ignorance, and the ignorance comes about because of the convenience. I mean, I just have to continue to reflect back to
Convenience.
how times have changed and how technology has allowed us to have so much.
Think about the simple definition of the word technology, though. The layman's term that I was given when I was younger was to make life easier. That was the layman's definition of technology. So even when you use that word, if you substitute, making life easier, convenience, things of that nature, that all revolves around technology. And essentially, with as smart as we have the ability to be with this technology in the palm of our hand, it makes our life so easy that it dumbs us down to where we only focus on convenience. Which,
Well, and you're right. The problem is that there's one reality. There's one reality is when you open up the door of technology and say, you can educate yourself beyond belief on your spare time. Why, if you commute to work and you ride a bus or a train, you can do that while you're riding, and be so much more educated as to in comparison to what you were. But the problem is when that door of technology opened, a lot of other bullshit came in too, right? Like pornographic sites, like all of this stuff, all these, everybody just took advantage of it, you know, to try to have a platform to do a lot of stuff. You have music, you have good music, you have not so good music, but but when the door of technology opened, it opened up to all of that too. So it gets back to what you said, Joe, to the convenience, right? You know, it's more convenient now to, instead of watch YouTube about, you know, how to really uh, best invest your money, you know, people are watching porn instead, you know, and the problem is, I'm going to make a statement that a lot of people are not going to like, because the problem is everybody's not qualified to use these things.
Mm.
Everybody is not qualified to use the things. These things, John, you and I had this conversation once about cell phones and computers. I mean, if I were a burglar, you know, a technological burglar is a hacker, right? And it's so easy to go in. I mean, you know, that's why you have all of these you know, antivirus software and different things like that, to the extent that you believe that. But a lot of, but basically, if you remember back in the day when our parents used to leave the front door open and just lock the screen door, and sometimes wouldn't even lock the screen door, right? But back then you could just walk right in. Today it is much easier to walk right into your computer and your cell phone. Anything that allows you to communicate, cell phone, tablets, or whatever, they're all computers. They're all just mini computers, and it's easy to burglarize it. So you can understand that if you put this in the hand of somebody that all day long they're just going to take pictures of themselves and post it on these social sites, they are ignorant to the real value of this, right? And so we get drowned in that, and it becomes convenience. And that's why, you know, I mean, quiet as it's kept, that's why we have widespread homosexuality. That's why we have this discussion about when we talk about Dave Chappelle and this transgenderism, right? I mean, if you remember what J.K. Rowling said, you know, the Harry Potter creator, I mean, she said there's only one gender, you know, and the transgender and LGBT community got extremely upset. Like, who has the right to say, okay, there's another gender in our society? Who has the right to say that? How dare somebody say that, you know, that all of a sudden in 2021 now we have three genders?
Mm.
Nobody has the right to do that, but it is so
I still haven't figured out what the third gender is.
well, yeah, neither has J.K. Rowling, because she said it doesn't exist, you know.
Question
Um,
mark.
but again, but it gets back to what we were talking about earlier, that the moment you say that it doesn't exist, and all of a sudden, you know, you're attacked by the cancel culture, the cancel culture. You know, now they want to silence you. And that just gets back to what we were talking about. You know, why are we into, and why do we promote silencing people in a country where the very First Amendment says you have the right to free speech and free expression? Why do we do that? Why do we even allow that? You know, I look at the situation with the baby. I don't like what the baby said. I think he was wrong, because I think you know, he talked about the spreading of HIV. He implied that it only is spread in the gay community. I think he's wrong. I know he's wrong. You know, there's one city in this country that at one point the number one group that was spreading HIV infections was black heterosexual females. You know, so I think he's wrong in that respect, but he has the damn right to express his opinion, even if it's wrong.
Yeah.
And when he expresses it, and then all of a sudden, as promoters, people put the pressure on promoters to cancel all of his concerts and try to take his financial standing in his life, and, you know, affect his family,
Man.
because he exercised his First Amendment right. That's
Yeah.
the problem. That's the real cancel culture. And here's another point that I made on my show that I thought was really interesting, is that the very people that promote and probably created the cancel culture are the very people, i.e., the media, who cannot exist except for the First Amendment.
Mm.
That's crazy. It is the media that only exists as the media in this country, and like no other country in this world that relies on that. It only exists. Take the First Amendment away, and you're not going to be seeing news channels. But that's the same group that is promoting the cancel culture.
So in other words, the First Amendment protects the fools too.
Yes.
Damn.
Yeah, freedom of press. Did you read that in there? The freedom.
Yes.
That's what that is. And when you're in a courtroom like in Kentucky, not the federal court system, because cameras are not allowed in the federal courtroom, but in a state court, the moment one of the judges say, "I don't want that camera in my courtroom," they're going to run to federal court and say they're violating our rights under the First Amendment, the right to free press. And
That's right.
It's not their right, it's just their right to bring it to you. It's your right.
Yeah.
But they get that. But it is the media. And many may say that a lot of these problems are caused by the big media. It's the media that's causing all these problems. But the media can't exist without the First Amendment. But it's the very same media that is promoting the cancel culture. How do you do that? It is a straight and strict a conflict of interest.
It almost sounds like we are spiraling into a never-ending tunnel of fucked upness. I mean, because one can't exist without the other, and one will exist with the other.
Unless we change decision makers, unless we change the decision makers in whatever way that takes. But until we change the decision makers, yeah, I think we're spiraling down, because you got kids growing up today. That were stuffed with a lot of this antisocial stuff. And that's my opinion, antisocial stuff. So you watch channels like Bravo and different things like that. And the kids grow up and they see that stuff that they see on Bravo as the norm. And it may be some shady pawn shop owner, some shady pawn shop owner. But now you got kids wanting to grow up to be a shady pawn shop owner, But the real thing is that what you see on Bravo, when you're a kid and you see, two men living a life like this is the way it's supposed to be, they're carrying around a kid like this is a family and stuff like that. And the kids grow up and think that that's normal. But to some people, it is normal. We see it because of our generation. We'll say that's abnormal. But who's to say a kid that saw that for 15 years, who's now 21, just thinks that's normal? So our sons and daughters come home and say, "Hey, look, I'm into the same sex thing," and we got to sit down and have a conversation with them, right? You look at the 21-year-olds, or the 30-year-olds today, and their daughters come home and say, "Hey, look, I think I'm into this." Look at Dwayne Wade.
But hey,
look, they embrace it.
Right there in school, in high school, I mean, in middle school, even elementary school, even there's cases of kids that are coming out in school. So now the kids are going to grow up with it as young as elementary school, with kids coming out saying I'm gay and this, that, and the other. It's just, I mean, yesterday at the mall, John, I told you I was out with the family, and baby girl, we walk into the Ultra Beauty store at St. Matthew's Mall, and there is a display with clearly some man, and he's got makeup and stuff on, right? I don't remember the name, but apparently he's some big YouTube personality, and he does makeup. As soon as baby girl saw him, "Oh, that's such and such. Oh, such and such," and his makeup. She recognized him, and it was as if he was this great thing to her. And it's just amazing how that's a normalcy to her now, as opposed to it being abnormal. And you're right. When you start thinking about this, man, this is just, we're spiraling in a direction. But then this is us talking, and we only believe, we believe a certain way. So now the people on the other side that believe, opposing to us. So now the question is, who's really right? Because some people say, okay, well, the Bible dictates a foundation of right and wrong, right? But the Bible has over 500 translations.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, my dad calls the NIV version the New Idiot's version. You know, people use it all the time. Pastors stand at the pulpit and use it. It's got 250 something missing words in there that, you know, if you believe the words are important and that they steer context, then, you know, it begins to bring that version into question, right? Yet and still, people stand up and use it, and there's a whole sect of people that are going to learn from that particular book and move forward. But back to these laws, what can we do? Because I think I heard something recently. Somebody lost a case trying to use religious, rights as the reason why they can't take the vaccine. So, I mean, what can you do? You know, if you're at work right now, lots of people, nurses. I mean, I can't imagine that at all these hospitals, doctors' offices, and different places that I'm hearing people are getting laid off from, that nobody said, hey, it's my religion. You know, I'm assuming people tried that and it didn't work. But what can people really do? I mean, how do you even start that as your argument?
Well, here's something that's very interesting, and I want to address this to Karl about the 14th Amendment. And nor shall any state deprive any persons of life, liberty, or property without due process. So, in other words, they come up with the mandate. It's not a law, but apparently they're going to make it an emergency to make it a law. Then they can deny you your life, your liberty, and your property, right? Your life, your liberty of movement and everything, and the property that you own, right? And then they'll put that up under the due process, because the emergency part, and make that the due process. So now they say, okay, we can take these rights from you now. And so that's the confusing part, is making a mandate a law to where now they violate you, and they say now it was with due process because this is now an emergency law.
Well, you know, again, the key.
I mean, R. Kelly could use that same argument. It was an emergency. I had to pee. She was in the way. I'm sorry. It's an emergency.
R. Kelly's a whole different story. but you know, the key phrase is emergency, and the government knows that. The government knows that all it has to do is say it's an emergency. But this thing has not been tested in modern times, right? When you had the Spanish flu back in I'm not sure when it was, the 20s or the 30s or the early 1900s. We had the pneumonia epidemic, and you had the Spanish flu. You had people who were not like people are today, right? People today are going to speak out. People today are going to resist. But back then, if you resisted, they call you a communist, right? So today it's a little bit different, but I think the key phrase is emergency. It always has been emergency, and it is emergency. And so long as there has been established a rationale for the emergency, then yeah, John, a lot of these rights go out the door. And that's the shame of it all. A lot of them go out the door. But I understand what your concern is, and your question is that, are you really using this mandate as a disguise to lessen these rights so you can get done what you want to have done, right?
Well, that goes back to an agenda.
Right. Well, and I would say that that's probably, you know, what the case is. I mean, the president of the United States today feels that we are a safer society if everybody is vaccinated, or if at least 80-90% of us are vaccinated, and then we establish herd immunity, so they don't give a damn about the other 10% who are unvaccinated, because the herd immunity is going to keep us all safe, just like the pneumonia vaccine, just like the flu vaccine, right?
Yeah, but getting the virus in and of itself and getting over it naturally helps formulate a bit of immunity. And if you have enough people doing that, then you ultimately yet and still create herd immunity. My question is, even when you talk about that, I mean, why is it
Before you answer, man, let me finish that point about what this president's doing.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, the president is basically saying that he believes that everybody should be vaccinated, right? And he believes in this ideal of herd immunity. And quite candidly, I believe in the concept of herd immunity too. I believe that we all don't die of the flu every year because of herd immunity, right? And I haven't taken the flu vaccine in years. You know, I took it when I was going through stage 4 cancer, but after that, I didn't take the vaccine. Just didn't. So the only reason why I'm still here and not die, and I haven't died of the flu is because of herd immunity. So I get that, and I agree with that. I agree with this whole idea of herd immunity. I think the bigger problem, though, is what you said earlier, Joe. Is I commented on the 1%. I mean, the reality is that whatever it is you think about being vaccinated or not being vaccinated, the reality is that the coronavirus is in a sense just like the flu. It's just a little bit more contagious.
Well, let's be specific and say the COVID-19, because coronavirus is the virus that is responsible for common cold and everything else.
Right.
We'll
Okay.
say the COVID-19, a particular strain of the coronavirus.
Right. Well, I don't separate all of that. And the reason I don't separate all of it, Joe, because again, we're looking at less than 1%. We're looking at less than 1%. Now, I want you to keep 700,000 dead people in context. There are millions of at-risk people for everything in this country, for the dying of the flu.
Now, 750,000, is that the U.S. number?
No, 700,000. Yeah, that's the U.S. number.
That's the U.S. number. So
US number.
what, about 320 million people in the U.S., right?
Yes. So,
okay.
So the point is well taken, and I think one of y'all said it earlier. What is the big fuss about this thing when more people are dying in the streets than they are of this virus, right? Kids are not so prone. Kids are not really in danger. I mean, some kids are. And so it gets back to this idea of the justice system, right? You said, well, we rather see 99 people go free than convict one innocent man. And I think that's the theory, right? The theory is, look, we rather see, everybody vaccinated before we, give one person up. And I
see this?
Yeah, we can see that. The 3.2 million.
I just want to show everybody 320 million times 1% is basically 3.2 million.
Right.
So again, just to put into perspective what 1% is, and we're talking less than 1%. I mean, literally, let's see, 700,000. So we're literally talking roughly about, good Lord, like you
20%
start playing.
20% of 1%.
Exactly. So it's ridiculous when we start talking about a pandemic. It's not necessary.
Except, Joe, if you lose somebody to this, then you say it's all worth it. Right?
Exactly. That's the fear mongering. That's how this all plays out. But and here's the thing: so many things get buried. We've already established that there has been plenty of cases where people died, and the family's like, "Huh? They had a heart attack, but they had COVID-19." And again, it got labeled as such, as death by COVID-19, simply because in this emergency, okay, I understand things when it comes to insurance, right? So when it comes to insurance, when I was an engineer for Bell South, anytime we had some heavy rains, our management told us that every job, there was a special code we had to label every job. I asked my manager, my first level one time, and he said the reason why is because all of those jobs get taken care of by insurance. Now, it didn't matter whether the job or the issue at hand had anything to do with the storm that was going on. It didn't matter. Every job had to be labeled as such so that they could get paid by their insurance company, which in a sense is fraud, right? Same thing is going on here. I had a friend, their family member died in the home, and the coroner, by the EMS came, the EMS called coroner. This was recently, within the past few weeks. They swabbed her. The coroner swabbed her for COVID, right? Now that's weird to me. I don't know, but that's just weird. But we're in the midst of this pandemic. Coroner swabbed her right there in the house to check to see if it was COVID. Now, or if she had COVID. Now, in my mind, first thing that pops in my head is, well, I guess now the coroner is also getting federal funding if, in fact, someone that they pick up is labeled as death from COVID.
Well,
Right?
when you talk about that from an agenda standpoint, Joe, you're probably right, because you know that if you lose a loved one and today, and on their death certificate, if there's any mention that a contributing factor was COVID-19, right, then that qualifies that family for a lot of money.
The family gets money. The coroner gets money.
Right.
If they died at the hospital, they get money. And I've talked to a young lady recently that works in the hospital. She said just the diagnosis alone is federal funded money to the hospital. And then if that person ends up on a ventilator or gets treated there and dies at the hospital, they also get money on the other side of that as well.
Wait a minute, are y'all saying it pays to die of COVID?
Yes.
It pays
Yes.
these days to die of COVID-19.
But the hospital doesn't get it just because they diagnose. They have to diagnose and then they have to report it. That's when they get it.
Well, yeah, which again, VAERS
Right.
is the whole conversation with VAERS reporting and all that good stuff.
Well, there it is, a check. And
exactly.
So give me my
it's a financial incentive.
I'll be damned.
Right. Yeah, you get, if you,
I didn't know the family gets a check. I didn't know that. Well, I'll be damned.
Yeah, if you have a diagnosis of COVID-19 and it is the first diagnosis on that, you could probably get up to I think you could probably get up to $30,000. Your family could probably get up to $30,000
Yep.
if COVID is the first listing of contributing factor of death. Now, if it's a second or third, which there are always with a lot of people that are dying of COVID, there are other diagnoses that may be primary. But yeah. I mean, there's a financial kickback.
And you know that there's a conversation that's being had when this person dies. You know that the doctor or whoever is sitting with this family and the family of the deceased that died here in the hospital, and they're telling them this very thing that you're telling us. Now the family has to make a decision of whether to agree with this COVID-19 being on the death certificate.
Wow. For a check.
Or not for a check. And in most people's minds, and I'm sorry to say, in a lot of our people's minds, they're going to say, ooh, I want the money.
Yeah, because most of black people don't have life insurance.
And because they ain't got life insurance.
So that's a guarantee. Burial money. Damn.
Right, yeah.
And look, and I don't even know if they have to take care of the burial, because at that point, federal funding allows the hospital to take the body and do whatever they do with it. Stick it in a refrigerated truck or whatever. I don't know.
No, you will get approved for some money and they'll send it to you back in the form of reimbursement. That's the way it works. Yeah. There's a lawyer commercial out that says, I listen to Black Gospel Radio on the TuneIn app, and they advertise all the time. We can get you $300,000. We can get you up to $300,000.
They know who they marketing to. Black Gospel Radio.
It's on Black Gospel Radio. Yeah. So
y'all niggas need this. Y'all niggas need this money.
So So
Go ahead,
what's interesting is that, you know, you have the naysayers, and when I say the naysayers, you have those people who push back against unvaccinated people and push back against anti-vax people. But at the end of the day, there is so much shit out there that make you wonder, like, damn, you know, wonder if there is an agenda, you know, because I got to be honest with you, I'm not there. You know, when you see people dying of it, when you see people having it, when you see people with the symptoms and different things like that, you know, it becomes a different approach. But at the end of the day, it is problematic that people that corners have an incentive to say this COVID is present, or a hospital has an incentive, financial incentive. You know, that's worse than the pharmaceutical companies, right? You know, I mean, we know doctors, there are doctors out there who are living their lives under an herbal diet full of herbs. But when you come in their doctor's office,
hey, look, let me say this: 60% of the world right now still uses herbal medicine as a way to treat disease. Those are facts. Okay, go ahead.
right. However, if you deal with an American doctor, the first thing they're going to do is pull out their prescription pad, right? And the problem with that is that we all know now that doctors are getting a kickback from prescribing that medication. That's why the pharmaceutical
It's
rep,
been that way.
you're sitting in the doctor's office and the person next to you has a nice suit on and a briefcase. And it's like, well, what the hell they're going? Why can't they just go to work first, then come and see the doctor? No, they're going in there because they're going to say, we've got a new drug that treats HIV. And if you prescribe this, you know, there's going to be a kickback for you. And then all of a sudden, you know, and so we wonder about, you know, the opioid epidemic. I mean, that's not easy. I mean, that's not hard to figure out. We know why I got there, because you go in there and it's just pill, 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 pill. Even though a lot of those doctors, you go and have dinner with them, and their diet is better than yours. And you say, well, why are you eating that? You know, but it's the same. But the interesting thing, my whole point is this: is that they are prescribing it because they have an incentive to prescribe it. And it's the same thing. So when you see how messy this COVID thing is in terms of, you know, getting burial reimbursement and stuff like that, hell, there might be people going to the hospital saying, well, you know, she gonna die anyway. Can you just say she died of COVID?
Damn.
Hey, look, look, y'all know Brother Michon Daniels. He said he was just told by a nurse yesterday that after her brother died from suicide, people were asking her to have it listed as COVID related.
Damn.
Right.
You know, I mean, I've talked to multiple medical professionals. I mean, I was standing in line first of the month, October, at the grocery store, and you know, first of the month, them lines are long. And so I had the opportunity to have a great conversation with the young lady that I'm still trying to have come on the show. But she's a medical professional. She works in radiology here locally in Louisville, Kentucky, and she stated that. She said, look, I know people in the billing department, friends and whatnot, and in every aspect of the hospital. I have friends there, and we have these conversations. She's like, look, number one, they don't even clean out the what are the machines that they keep putting the people on? What is it called? The ventilators. She said they don't clean out the ventilators very well. And it was funny. I was talking to a lady who, an insurance client, and she's, you know, retired 30 years as a nurse or something like that. And she said, and I told her that story. She said, Joe, I agree. They didn't do it back when I was in nursing. They didn't clean it that well. So I can't imagine with being overcrowded and whatnot, do they have the ability to clean it that well now? But she, you know, and this is somebody who's practicing for 30 years. So and now today, same issue is still happening. They're not cleaning out the vent. So they're just passing COVID-19 from one person to another all day long. It's a big a virus orgy that's happening in hospitals these days. And, you know, it's just amazing. The federal government is just dumping money, printing money, dumping money, printing money, and paying out to these pharmaceutical companies for this quote unquote vaccine. You know, but here's another question. How is it that you got vaccines like Moderna and others that seem to be more of a death shot versus others. Why are they still able to continue to give the vaccine?
Yeah, that's my question about the depriving me of my life. But let me ask this, and I got to roll out. But it's one of the questions I think I try to look at is dealing with this Constitution and why I don't see Black people in no organization defending our constitutional rights. Why is that? I don't care who it is, what party it is, what group it is, what church it is. Now, police kill somebody Black, you'll see Negroes everywhere marching, Black Lives Matter. But why is it that when it comes to when the government does something that is trampling on our constitutional rights, you don't see Black people standing up today like it was in the 60s? Why is that? What is, I mean, you got people
niggas these days. That's what
you got people, and this is why I talk about the militia, the white militia, whatever you want to call them. I love those guys. I support them. Where do I send my money? Because they are in protection of a constitution that I enjoy.
Put baby powder on my face, and I'm about to go get a gun and stand with them.
But to enjoy this constitution, I enjoy it, right? But I don't see no Black group, and we can talk about a lot of things what Black people are grouping together and talk about, but I don't hear them talking about no pushback on no mandates. Whenever the government talks about doing a mandate, I don't hear no Black person talking about, no, we're not going to do it. Even during the riot times, even though people were riding with masks on, like, what the fuck, right? You hate the government, but he told you to wear a mask and you wear a mask. And the only real hero in this Kentucky was David Cameron, right? He's the hero. But we don't recognize him hero because we hated the nigga because why he didn't do nothing about Breonna. But what he did was he challenged this governor and said, no, we're not going to do this mandate shit. No, we're going to take this shit to court. And the mandate stopped. Literally, it stopped. And think if it wasn't for if it was a Democrat, I'm sure if he was a Democrat, I'm sure he just would have wrote and went on and went with the guy. But and I don't want to make it a political thing. I don't want to make it Democrat versus Republican, even though it seemed like Republicans are kicking ass right now on that Constitution shit. But I'm asking Black people, where in the fuck are you on the issue? Where do you stand when it comes to mandates violating your constitutional rights? I don't see Black people sticking up. I see Black people staying fucking so quiet as a mouse until when we either talk about reparations, which niggas get all up in arms, and don't have a reparation conversation with Bootstrap getting up on your own fucking feet. Niggas really go crazy. But nobody wants to talk about what they're doing with the mandate. It's like we fucking scared of the government or some old shit. Like when they say something, we just boo-hoo and afraid to, like, what the fuck? That's the problem.
Maybe they just agree.
No.
Maybe they just agree.
When they disagree, they yell, scream, and protest. Right?
No. Maybe they just agree with the mandate. So you have such a high percentage who agree with it. And I think the real concern is, why do they agree with it?
Correct.
Right? More so than the fact that, because you might have 80% of Black folks that just say, okay, well, I'm okay with that. I believe all this shit that, if I'm fat, if I'm dark skinned, if I got hypertension, if I got high blood pressure, if I got a heart disease, then I need to take this vaccine. So maybe you have people who believe that they're not as healthy as you and I, John, right? So they're on board with that. But you're talking about that number. Let's say if the number is 20% who really don't agree, who are the real anti ones. But they don't want to speak up. And I think it gets back to the whole ideal of the cancel culture. Some people can be canceled in our world and some people can't, right? You can't be canceled. Joe can't be canceled. I can't be canceled. But you take that manager at McDonald's who has child support to pay, who has a mortgage to pay, who has kids, he can be canceled. He's going to do it. He's going to fall in line.
So yeah, he's a slave to that paycheck. But what's interesting is that while Negroes sit back and do nothing, what they're trying to do is take away your right of movement. Imagine them saying you can't cross state line without a vaccine.
Well, they said that. They said that. Well, no, not without a vaccine, but they did say early on that, you know, if you come into Kentucky, this is what you have to do. If you come into Maryland, you know, when I went to a funeral in Maryland in earlier this year, I actually had to have a positive COVID test result before I could get off the plane. Now it was lazily enforced because nobody asked me for my card, but that was the requirement before when you got your ticket, you booked the ticket to Baltimore. You said you're flying into Maryland.
Oh, you know, I saw that too when I was traveling. It was like some type of alert from the airline itself, and I just shrugged my shoulders. I didn't pay it no mind and went on because, like you said, it was lazily enforced, and you know, I'm just waiting to the day where somebody tries to hold me down and give me the shot so I can just, you know, whoop some ass. That's what I'm waiting for.
But this is where we're going. This is where it's headed. I don't see black people sticking up for it. I saw they was talking about it. Who stuck up? The militia. The white people said, no, fuck no, we ain't gonna comply. But I'm saying, where are you Negroes at? Where the black people at?
I tell you why. I tell you why we don't. It's a simple answer. Fucking ignorance. That's why. All right, we don't talk about shit that we don't know shit about.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you start talking about the law, the Constitution, you start talking about the government, first off, the first thing we're going to do is label that as white people shit.
Yeah.
They know about that. That's what we do. We say that's white people shit. You know, you know, Karl, if you wasn't so cool, but you was a lawyer, then, you know, you probably get labeled a certain way, right? Because you know about that white people shit, you know, but you happen to be cool, brother. So, you know, they let you in, you know, they let you back, they let us back in, right? So, you know, I mean, it's interesting how again, that goes back to our conversation about labels among each other, how we do that. We sit there and label people, you know, just because they're smart. I got called a nerd last night by a child jokingly because I was able to electronically fix something and wire it together to make their lights work. You know, but I mean, I used to be an engineer, you know, I can do stuff like that. It comes easy to me. But again, ignorance. If we don't know about it, we ain't gonna talk about it. So we think we know about reparations. We think that shit is an easy one to stand up and yell and scream about. Why? Because we black. Oh, you talking about black people? Well, that's me. Guess what? I can yell and scream about it. Why? Because I'm black. You can't tell me about it, whitey, because you white. I'm black. Reparations had to do with me. So you can't talk about it. I can. But even yet and still, we don't get shit done. Why? Because of our level of ignorance there. Our level of ignorance to the law. Our level of ignorance to the white people shit. So, you know, yet again, like sisters came on from Play Cousins and said, hey, we need to study white supremacy. That should be something that every black person studies, is the art of white supremacy, so that you know how to properly do things like contracts and things of that nature. The reason why they get shit done in law and have your ass locked up is because of understanding the law. You know, they do things in a certain way. You know, John, you dictated right here on the show. Reason why you out and can, you know, do what you do, regardless of anything else, is because you studied and begin to understand the law. So again, ignorance is the sole reason why our people perish, because of a lack of knowledge. Man, if that wasn't the scripture that black people focused on when they do things. You know, we're so contradictory when it comes to religion. We'll sit here and talk about tattoos and stuff like that. Oh, I don't want to mess up my temple. You know, the scripture talks about, you know, don't mess up your temple, however it's worded. But, you know, we go and defile our temple in many ways by our diet and everything else, right? So again, it's all about interpretation. It falls right in line with people making a decision on their own, and who's going fall in line with them. Hey, we don't speak up because of our ignorance.
Hey, I believe this. I believe in that saying: when you break a law, and you break the law, you cannot say, well, I didn't know it was a law. So ignorance is not an excuse.
Yeah.
Ignorance is also not an excuse to continue to eat the way you eat either, but people still fucking eat fucked up. And so when you get sick and you're landing in a hospital and your body's saying, fuck you, I'm leaving this bitch, your ignorance is not an excuse to say, well, you get healthy. No, your ass is just going to die because of your ignorance. It's no fucking excuse. Stay there if you like.
Man, when I first got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, when I was like 20-something years old, 21, and the doctor was telling me that, you know, about some of the end results, people walking around with a doo-doo bag on their hip and shit like that, I said, hell no. Hell no. I went researching and found out all type of shit and was able to move far away from that, because ain't nowhere in the world I can't get no woman walking around with a doodle bag on my waist, bro. It's not gonna happen. So whatever, if that was my motivation, so be it. That was my motivation to find health and wellness. So be it. You know,
there ain't no woman gonna be on your side with a shit bag on his side.
It's standing beside you. It stinks around here. What is that? Why is everywhere we go it stink?
Oh, but yeah, take care of your health, and that's very important to go through. Listen, I gotta cut out of here, guys.
I do too. Right. I do too, Joe.
All right, yeah, I gotta go too. I just want to say one last thing. R. Kelly did try to use that. I don't know. You know, he did try to use that. I didn't know that it wasn't a law. You know, y'all let me do it with Aaliyah. I didn't know. You know, but either way, until next time, we'll see y'all right here at the Tipping Point Morning Show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, man.
All right, now.
All right, bye.
You are listening to The Tipping Point Show with your host, Mr. Just Ask Joe, John Yeah. Right here on WLOU. Stream it live on Facebook and WLOUonline.com. And now, The Tipping Point Show.